My name is Katie Finn. I'm 26 years old, 26 years young. And for most of my 26 years, I've lived in Florida, in Jacksonville, North Florida. And then I've been lucky enough to travel the world a lot. And I've been I've been to Southern Africa, about 7 countries there. But I was working in development and natural resource protection for rural communities. And then that led me to get a master's University of Edinburgh. I did that for a year. And while I was there, I did my master's thesis on environmental factors of the Syrian civil war. And you can't read anything about the Syrian civil war without hearing about the major consequence, which is loss of life, and then the refugee crisis. Mm-hmm. And that really piqued my interest. And I switched from development into humanitarian aid when I went to Bosnia to volunteer for 2 months. So I graduated into the pandemic. And I just thought what a bunch of people before me have thought, which is, okay, now what do I do? And then everyone said, what do you want to do? And I could not shake the memories of the things that I had read about refugees. So I went to Bosnia and I worked there with a very small volunteer-run grassroots organization, really on the ground. Mm-hmm. And I met a bunch of amazing people through this experience and made some great friends that I'm happy to say are migrants and refugees themselves. And I have never been lucky enough to meet them because we had them in such a limited capacity in the States, especially in the last 4 years under Donald Trump. He really was very harsh with their immigration policy. I did not ever get to meet one personally. And then I met somebody that just blew every preconception or preconceived notion I had out of the water. And now I feel very humble and very blessed to call many people friends. And a lot of them are Pakistani people that are fleeing Pakistan. And that they started talking to me about how they would like to get into the European Union. And then eventually, God willing, they would be in Canada or the US because of the economic opportunity there. And then I started thinking, how do they know so much about our politics and our immigration policy and our healthcare system and our presidents? And it's because they study, right? This is their dream to come to the US or Canada.
Before we move further, I'm not sure if you explained why Bosnia, like why was it specifically Bosnia that you traveled to? Was there a certain trigger there?
I guess because one, I had never thought about refugees in Bosnia before. So that was interesting to me. And two, I heard about a lot of violence at the Bosnian-Croatian border. Yeah. And men and families, women as well, getting pushed back from the border and with horrific wounds and near death. So I really thought like that is interesting and that is a fight that I want to pick. So I will go there. And Bosnia, I don't know if it's a good or bad thing, but Bosnia didn't require anything for COVID, no corona test or this or that. So it was quite easy to get in and out. Corona doesn't exist in Bosnia. Wow. The numbers are just like everywhere else, but they walk around like it doesn't exist to them. So I got there, I was like, you guys haven't been watching the news? Maybe you want to turn on the news. But yeah, Bosnia was a crazy place. It was a very extreme case because the crisis is really tense there between the Bosnian authorities and the migrants and the refugees. I'm on my way. Actually, now I'm going back to Bosnia in mid-March, and that is to continue this work. And I was lucky enough to see some gaps while I was there. And so I intend to try to fill those while I can. And also because the situation has gotten so much worse than it was. Yeah,
Tell us what exactly is going on? What is the situation there?
Situation is dire. So I don't know how good you are with your European geography. And I am not good because I'm American. So we're not taught geography, right?
We're not.
I never noticed how American I am until people ask me where other countries are. And I'm like, okay, they didn't teach us that. So don't feel bad.
They did not. Yeah.
Yeah. Me too. Don't worry. Me too. And I was living there. I would lay out the basics, the skeleton of the situation, because I'm not an expert. I'm not a migration expert. But what I pieced all this together from the guys and the people that I've met. We're going to focus on Pakistani people, but there are a lot of Afghans and there are a lot of Syrians and North African, Algeria, Morocco, Tunisia. A lot of these people are also moving, but there's a difference between the classification of people. If you're a migrant, you're considered to be moving and looking for a new home for economic reasons. And if you're a refugee, you are fleeing because you have a direct fear of losing your life. So that is an ethnic persecution, religious persecution. Somebody put a hit on you, a gang related a lot of times, or especially in Pakistan's case, ISIS. There's a lot of Al-Qaeda, especially in the border that they share to Afghanistan and Iran. All of the violence that was going on in 2009, 2010 spilled over into Pakistan. And there are so many villages there that have been taken over by ISIS for resources, for money, for people, and taken back over the border to Afghanistan. So Pakistani people are like, yeah, we're out of here. And even though we're not considered to be refugees, we can't live like this. And another thing is that violence all peaked in 2009 when the U.S. was doing its thing over there, right? And it created a lot of instability. And that scared investors off, and it scared other world powers off because Pakistan, the whole region was like no-go. Yeah. So people are growing up and they're trying to find jobs, and they're trying to get degrees, and there's no jobs. There's no investment. There's no influx. So they're leaving. So yeah, they're not fleeing their lives, but you stay or you're hungry, right? You stay and you can't provide for your family. So you go.
So I'm guessing they're somewhere in this limbo. They're in this limbo where they're not classified as official refugees, but yet they really can't make a living. So then what do you do with your life?
Exactly right.
Were they from a specific part? Did you see any pattern about, were they from any specific parts of Pakistan? Was it near the border?
What I read was the Northwest. The Northwest closer to the borders.
Okay, yeah. So that was obviously one of the most heavily affected areas, especially during the whole war on terror. Right. There's a bunch of instability there. So that would make sense. So these are people who have left the country since 2009, and they're still out there. They're still, somehow they wound up in Bosnia.
Yeah. Yeah, because they get stuck. They go through Iran, and then they catch a bus to the border of Turkey. Then they cross the Turkish border on foot, and they walk through Turkey. They get on a little dinghy through the Mediterranean Sea, and then they cross into Greece. And that's no small feat. People die. You've heard of that route being just murderous for refugees. People are dying on that route. These little crappy boats they're given, they don't hold up. And they're very expensive, and they get smuggled, whatever. That's a whole nother situation. But they get into Greece, and then they walk to Bosnia. Great. Everybody's happy to let them through because nobody wants mass influx of people to stay in their country. Except when they get to Bosnia, they hit the border to Croatia. Now, Croatia is part of the European Union. And in the European Union, you're supposed to be able to claim asylum. You're supposed to be able to say, according to the UN Refugee Convention, hey, I'm running for my life. And they have to give you a caseworker, a translator, a whole very expensive process to prove yes, you are or no, you're not. Croatia doesn't want to mess with 10,000 people a month. They really don't. So they just pass you all the way through, or they say, no, we're not letting you in, and they kick you back out to Bosnia. Bosnia is not in the EU. So Bosnia is stuck with them. Really, Bosnia is not a rich country on its own. And these people are just recovered from their own war in the 90s, 92 to 94. And so there was the whole siege of Sarajevo. I'm sure you know about that, when Bosnia and Croatia and Serbia were all together, and there's this horrible genocide. They're still reeling. And now they have 10,000, 30,000, 60,000 people since 2019 have passed through Bosnia. And they get stuck because Croatia won't let them in. Yeah. So they're trapped.
So if they try to cross to Croatia, if they try to cross to any of the EU countries, they'll get caught and then get sent back to Bosnia. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah. How exactly does this work? So they get caught, and instead of sending them back to Pakistan, they send them back to Bosnia. Did they just push them across the border and say, you're not our problem anymore?
Correct. Correct. They catch them. They catch them running. They're running through the woods. Yeah. And the border police of Croatia are decked out. They got dogs. They have heat sensing cameras. They have thermal drones flying all the time. They can see them in the woods. And then they tackle them. They beat them. They strip them of all their clothes. And they take their phones, their money, their passports, if they even have papers at that point. They burn all their stuff in front of them, beat them one more time for good measure, put them in a van, and throw them into the woods somewhere many kilometers and miles away from the nearest town. And then the people have to walk all the way back, sometimes no shoes on, to 18, 20 miles. And then they start all over again in their underwear. Really bad. Really bad.
Cold. Yeah.
And there are, freezing cold. This is the thing, freezing cold. And there are so many people that have tried. I've met men who have tried to go to the game. That's what they call it when you cross the border. They call it going to the game. 50 times. 50 times they have tried to cross that border and failed. So they're stuck.
Where are they trying to go? It basically was as west as they can get, UK, Canada, US. That was their end
Germany is Austria.
Germany, another one. Wherever there's opportunities, basically.
Correct. And a lot of them have family already in Europe that migrated before when the route was more open. So they say, like, all I have to do is just get to Italy and my sister, my brother will pick me up on a train or pick me up by car and I will be safe. I just have to get to Italy. Literally, this is the last border for them. And then they are free. Yeah. And they cannot get by. It's that hard.
Katie, I find it's perplexing to me. I'm a Pakistani American. I am not very well aware of world issues, but I try. I try to especially keep in touch with my roots and keep an eye on news that are following Pakistanis. Why is it that I never heard about this? Why is it that the first time I'm hearing about this is through you?
I think that it is an ugly consequence of a broken system. Mm-hmm. And I also think that the Americas look at it like the European problem. And so our news covers a little bit here, a little bit there when we have to, but we're very concerned with our own. It was election year 1, so don't feel too bad about yourself, Happy, because it was election year and Corona. So there are a lot of things that should have been at the forefront of our attention, but we're not. And also, there's a lot of fatigue surrounding the Syrian civil war. That thing's been going on for 11 years now, and people are just like, okay, I can't take it. It's so depressing. I can't hear about it anymore. And so we have this thing where we block out anything that's uncomfortable. Yeah. And this is really uncomfortable. But also it's because nobody wants to report on it. It's embarrassing what's going on there. This is happening in our time. And I also think that it's difficult to cover because there is no solution. It's, what do you say? You say, okay, how do you stop the refugee crisis? Or how do you stop the migrant crisis? First, you need to convince people to stay in their homes. Okay, their countries are falling apart for a myriad of reasons. It's corruption, it's economic instability, it's terrorism. So who is going to address that, right? So they can report on it all day, but what news likes to do most of the time is say, and this is what we're going to do about it. Or lawmakers like to say, the State Department wants to step up and say, this is our plan. Nobody has a plan. We're just sitting around, especially Europe is just sitting around thinking, I hope somebody fixes it because but nobody is. And they're not going to stop coming because anyone would try to leave if their life depended on it. Everyone would go. So if you don't fix the source, why talk about the problem?
Yeah. And you mentioned earlier, Bosnia, of course, itself is not a very meaning it's not self-sufficient to the point of supporting all these people and giving them a good livelihood. What is their take on this? How are they interpreting the situation?
It has got to be very difficult for them. Because Bosnia itself, like I said, they went through their own war not long ago, and they were refugees. So the Bosniaks, they had to flee their country. A lot of them actually, interestingly enough, went to North Africa. A lot of them went into Europe and the UK, and a lot of them were given free passes to migrate as refugees to the US. So we have a really big Bosnian Serbian population in the US. And so them, out of all people, the Bosnians should be the most sympathetic. And they were. For years. And now it is to the point where I've spoken to plenty of people that are like, we want to help them, but we got to help ourselves. And there are so many of them and they stay forever. They're living in every abandoned house in these cities that I'm working in. They're filled with men, single men, and tent camps on people's properties. They're burning, they're making fires, they're cutting down trees. I don't know of a lot of crime, but I've walked around and there are a bunch of men sitting outside on benches in the dark, being shady. And I'm like, boys, come on, do something, talk nicely or pick up your trash. And because they're hosting you and it's very tense. And Bosnia has now said, we're done. We can't help them. We're going to make it now illegal for anybody to distribute aid, except for a couple of big organizations who are allowed, and that's Red Cross and the UN. Anyone else? You're deported if we see you helping them. Okay, I see why. They don't want to make life easy for them, but can you really stand by and while somebody freezes or starves?
Of course, they don't want this thing to continue. You said it's already about 60,000 people.
60,000 people that have moved through, Bosnia. Yeah, there are about 10 to 15,000 people in country now.
In the country right now, yeah. Right. And it seems like, is this pattern still continuing? Are the people still coming into Bosnia and getting trapped? Yeah. I know a lot of people are doing this out of desperation. They might think they have a shot, right? Or maybe they'll talk to somebody who thinks they can smuggle them all the way through and gives them these false promises of
for a lot of money
wherever they want. Yeah, for a lot of money, I'm guessing.
Yeah. I think that they're going because they don't know it is that bad. Either the ones who are going because they just turned 18 and they want to go to Europe and live in Germany and send money back to their families, they don't know how bad it is. But perhaps the ones who really are fleeing because they're desperate and they're being hunted, as a lot of them are, they would be there anyway, even if it meant almost death, because their situations are so bad at home. But I always tell my friends, I'm like, get on your Facebook, on their Facebooks. It's them posing in Belgrade or in Sarajevo and they have no clothes on. And I'm like, brother, I see you sleeping on the ground freezing, right? Why do you send this out to your family so that they know? And they go, so they don't worry about us. We don't want our families to know how bad it is here. But I say, but then that means that your little brother and your little cousin will think, that looks awesome. I think I'll go. Don't want him there either. They're not very honest, but they can't be because they're their family's only hope.
Now, why can't they go back? Have they thought about going back, or is it not that easy?
It's not that easy because a lot of times people from very rural villages, sometimes their whole village has put all of the money in the world that they have. They've taken out loans. They've sold their livestock, their houses. They owe people money to send them money to get them there, because all it really takes is one person to earn a minimum wage, albeit illegally, in Europe to support the entire village back home in Pakistan and Afghanistan. So everybody's banking on you. So you don't go home. You can't, because then you would have to face such disappointment, right? How could you face your family? It's so much pressure on them.
Tell a little bit about the geography of Bosnia. Which exact location is this happening? So I'm guessing it's at the border, the northwest border village.
Yeah, the town is called Bihać. There are the two last stops before you hit the border. There's Bihać and then there's Velika Kladuša. And Velika Kladuša is a bit smaller. And this is where everybody sets up base to go for the game. So they collect everything they need, their phones, their backpacks, their food, and then they go over the mountains and into Croatia. And then they get pushed back most of the time, and then they fall back and they regroup again. And so this is where everybody is collecting. And this is where the UN has built these camps that they think are going to solve the problem, but it's just to get people off the street. And they're miserable. You have 2 or 3 guys sleeping to a bed. All of the blankets have lice. Everyone has scabies. They have freezing cold water, no heating. And so they're just a temporary problem. They're not the solution by any means. They're just giving them some time to think of something else.
Yeah. So if I try to summarize this problem, so these are people who started migrating for a hope of a better life. They got stuck in Bosnia. Now they're in a situation where the EU won't let them in, of course, in any of the EU countries. They can't go back because out of necessity, they've taken out too many loans and they're in this really dire situation. So it's not that easy. And then they're stuck in Bosnia, and the people of Bosnia, of course, understandably, they want what's better for themselves first before they can help others. So they're in this situation, and then you said they're living basically below standard living. Well, where exactly are they getting any source of income? Are they working any jobs? How are they getting food basically on the table? Who's feeding them?
Organizations. Really, I cannot tell you how stressful it is, because I know groups of men, if I don't get them food, they don't eat for 3 days. Wow. Really, they are completely desperate. What they can do is use their passports to go to Western Union, and then their parents can send them money this way, and they can take out cash. But most of them don't have passports. Their passports were stolen or burned or lost years ago. I don't really know how they survive. And I tell you, they're barely surviving. Barely. Really. One of the biggest problems as well is that not only do they don't have the necessities, they don't have warm clothes, they don't have shoes, they don't have any food, but they also don't have access to healthcare. Only in the camps. In the camps, if you were to go to an official who worked for the UN and say, I have a toothache or I have a busted foot or an infection, they will take you to the hospital. They will. But anybody outside of the camps, and then just in Bihać alone, there are almost 5,000 people living outside of the camps. Just in Bihać alone, one city. And they live in the woods, and they live in these abandoned buildings and these decrepit places, and they just squat. And if they have any problem, they have no choice but to just suffer through it. Nothing. I can't do anything for them. And even giving first aid is enough to get a prison sentence right now in Bosnia. You do it secretly in the dark.
Yeah. Are they hiding from law enforcement? If law enforcement sees them in these abandoned buildings or in the jungles, what do? They just put them in prison?
They don't put them in prison, but they will put them in police vans, crush them in there, and then they drive them to these camps and they drop them off. But here's the thing. The camps are full. So they drop them off outside of the camp, and then it's 11 o'clock at night, And the camp says, we're not letting you in. We're full of people already. And you have to just sit there all night and freeze, or you can walk back 30 kilometers to Bihać.
Yeah.
And they do that to them just to be annoying, just to get them down. And while they're at it, they take their phones and they take their money. And they were just literally going to get some bread at the bakery, or just like going to fill their water jugs up, and then they get caught. And now they're 3 days out.
Tell me about some of the people that you met, that you spoke with, especially the Pakistani people. Were there any standout stories?
Always. There are always. I am always blown away by how young my friends are. And I have a group of guys that I visit regularly, because I think I serve a lot of people, but it's better if I get to hear their stories, of course, right? Like, just get to know them and who they are personally. And all of them speak some degree of English. All of them are well-educated, high school grads. They watch podcasts. They listen to podcasts and they watch YouTube, and they know exactly what's going on. And they miss their families. They haven't seen their moms sometimes for 5 years. And one group of people that really touched me, I met them. They were walking back from at night, in the middle of the night. They were walking down the street, and they were all limping. It's about 6 of them, all limping really badly.
Wow.
And I pulled my car over and I just said, hey, I see you need some help. Here's some food and some dates and some water bottles, and what's up with your feet? And they all sat down on the side of the road and undid their shoes, and all of their feet were broken. Each one of them had at least a broken foot, a couple of them 2 broken feet, because they were caught at the border. The Croatian police stripped them, humiliating, made them all lay down in a line, and then took a baton to their feet individually and bashed their feet in, and then threw them in a van and dumped them in the woods. So they had walked kilometers on broken feet. So now they're here. And I am not a doctor. I don't know how to set bones. I can't even give them pain medication. It just amazed me at how kind they were and optimistic. They said, Inshallah, God willing, we will try again when we are better in 2 months, and we will go again, and we will do it, and we will make it. And you can see their feet are broken. They have to be in such pain. They're not going to sleep tonight or tomorrow or the next night. There's no one coming to help them. And worse, their feet set wrong and they're crippled at 20. And then one of them, I became very good friends with him. His name was Malik. And his grandfather taught him English. His grandfather was a school teacher in Pakistan. And he taught him really good English. And Malik was always a translator between me and his friends. So he would say, so-and-so needs a new jacket, or so-and-so needs new shoes. These are his sizes. And he was my kind of go-to guy. And I would visit with them at least twice a week and go over there and check on their feet and buy them wraps and bandages and do my best. And then Malik went to Sarajevo, which is the capital of Bosnia, because there's an actual camp there, and it's a bit warmer than in the north in the mountains. And in Bihać, the local people are very anti-migrant. They're racist is what it is, and they hate them. And so you're not allowed, as a migrant, you're not allowed to eat at a restaurant, get coffee at a cafe, go in a grocery store. Most of the time, they kick you out immediately. It's terrible. I could never have coffee with my friends. I could never go buy my friend lunch. And that was really hard.
Even if they have money, right? They can't.
Just because of what they look like.
Yeah.
So you can imagine how that's something we take for granted. Going to lunch with your friend, just catching up over a pizza or something. I could never do it with them.
Yeah.
That was really hard. But when I went to Sarajevo one weekend, I hit Malik up and I said, hey, come to the city. And he caught the bus. He's actually allowed to ride the bus in Sarajevo. And he caught the bus and he rode in, and I took him to lunch, and we had Cokes and we had dessert and we had so much. I told him, order whatever you want. And it was such a weird thing, because it was like, finally we could be friends. And it was like, finally he has some dignity, right? Like, I don't have to meet in an abandoned house.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
This is what he deserves.
You can sit down with him as an equal, basically.
As an equal.
Have a normal conversation as a human being. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, just you don't know what that's like until you don't have that, because then we were equal and I wasn't just the giver. We could be together, and that was awesome. And he's a great person, and all of his friends are just full of hope and, like I said, optimism and tenacity. But then there are the ones and the people I've met that you can see that they are very broken and they are not young anymore. I have a friend, Tariq, who is in his 30s. And he's just told me over a fire one day, he said, Katie, like, I am wasting my life. I have all of these skills. I have all these things that I want to do. And here I am in my 30s. I'd love to get married and have kids. And I'm just wasting my best years just living like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really hard to hear that, because he's not wrong.
Yeah, I'm imagining like which direction can they go to get some silver lining in this situation?
Interestingly enough, Pakistan is the only country
Mm-hmm.
with a repatriation agreement with the UN. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're a Pakistani, you can go to anybody who works for the IOM in the camp or outside. You can say, I want to go home. Take me home. Get me out of this frozen wasteland. I'm tired of it. And they say, great. And they buy you a ticket to go home. And they'll put you on a plane. They'll escort you at every stop of the journey. Once you get home, they even give you a little bit of a stipend to start a new life if you wish. I don't know how much money it is, but Pakistan does have this agreement. I don't know how many people take that offer.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's tempting. I never asked anybody about it.
Yeah.
I've never discussed it with anybody, but I'm going to guess it's because it's the same thing. You go home and your family has invested so much in you, and you know that money will be gone in a second, and a life in Europe can provide for you and your children for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So you take that gamble. But I know it's tempting. I know on those cold nights when you haven't eaten for 2-3 days, I can imagine that all you want to do is go home. And a lot of them, if the ones that have walked, which is the majority of them, because it's very expensive to travel otherwise, but the ones that have walked over 3,000 miles.
Yeah.
So every mile thinking about this dream, like I'm going to make it, and then just get right there to the border and then just quit. They don't.
Yeah.
They don't, because they are already so committed to have gotten that far. They're not going to give up. And I've also asked this question to people that I'm close with and I have a good relationship with. I can be very candid. And I said, why are you living like this? Why are you sitting here warming your frozen fingers over a fire of garbage? And you have a master's degree in engineering from a great university somewhere. And these are Afghan people and Pakistanis as well. And I'm asking them, like, why are you here? And the answer is always the same. They go, Katie, you do not know what it's like at home. And if I had any other choice, I wouldn't be here. But I don't. And that is the answer. And you can't argue with that because you're like, yeah, okay, I've never seen what you have seen. I've never had to face this kind of just violence. And I believe them because the way they live, it is not humane. Humans should not be treated the way they're treated and spat on and humiliated. And also, they're dying in their sleep. It is so cold that they literally are going to sleep in the snow and they are not waking up. And they're finding bodies all the time of men and families frozen because they have no support. They have no help. Nobody's helping them. And you're only allowed to help them in the mandated way, which is just in the camps. So anybody helping the ones that are living outside of the camps, like I said, you are setting yourself up for a lot of legal headaches. You can just get deported.
So the camps are at capacity. They can't help anymore.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then Bosnia is asking the EU, they're saying, look, we have all these camps, they're at capacity, we need more money. And the EU says, yeah, well, we just gave you 85 million pounds, almost $100 million over the last couple of years to handle this problem. Where did it go? And Bosnia, two sides. Bosnia goes, we spent it all already. And some people say it was pocketed. It's corruption.
Yeah.
I don't know what the answer is. It's probably a little bit of both. Knowing European politics, it's probably both. And they say, we need more. And the EU says, we're not giving you any more because we think you're stealing it. And Bosnia says, okay, I guess these people are just going to die then. And it's a game of chicken. And that's what happened with Lipa camp just in December. The IOM and the Red Cross, these big aid organizations in there said, we can't live here anymore. There's no heat. It's in a mountain. Our trucks cannot bus up and truck up water every single day. And in the snow, we're out. We have to shut down the camp. Give us somewhere else. And Bosnia said, not until we get more money from the EU. And the EU said, we're not giving you any more money. And so that camp closed and thousands of people were evicted into nothing, into the woods, into the snow, just like that. Just one day they were in there and they were get out, get out, get out. And now they're standing outside of the camp with nothing, with their blankets. That's how mismanaged it is.
Yeah, right. So the EU and the Bosnian government are basically at a stalemate. They've both got different arguments against each other, and the money just disappeared. We don't know where it went. Then you have UN, but UNICEF kind of helping out with their camps, but they're at capacity. How can we help? How can regular people help?
My first suggestion, and what I think is the most important, is to raise awareness, to tell people that this is going on, and it is such an injustice.
Yeah.
But right now, it's occurring. And like you said, why are we not hearing about it? Because this could be the humanitarian disaster, right, of the decade if all these people die this winter. And they just might. So talk about it, read about it, post about it, put some pressure. And there are petitions going around to send to the EU to say, yo, do you know Croatia is beating people at the border? And the EU goes, no, we didn't know that at all. Yes, you did. And here's a petition with 50,000 signatures saying, stop, put an end to it. Okay, that's how you change. That's how you change the system. And then, of course, we always need volunteers to go in there, but you are setting yourself up for danger because you can get deported or thrown in jail. So that's, if you don't have the ability to do that, find an organization on the ground. I know of a few that they give directly. They'll have low overhead. They're volunteer run, and the food and the clothes go to the people. Find it and donate if you can. And really, it's amazing how cheap things are in Bosnia. Just $10 can actually feed a whole family for a week.
Oh, wow.
Really?
$10.
That's oil, flour, rice, salt, all these things. They can make chapati. They can make rice potatoes. That can feed. There is, even if you just can give a bit, 5 people for a week, you've kept them alive. Thanks a lot. You're probably the only person. I always suggest organizations that are volunteer run because they have low overhead costs. So these big UN organizations, they do a lot. They have a huge budget, but they also pay a lot in salaries and transportation costs, and people are driving around in Land Rovers, and this kind of eats into it a little bit. So I always would suggest just the people that are on the ground and that are trying to work directly. So people like me who are volunteers and going on our own. And thankfully, I have a really great family and friend support system that have said like, all right, Katie, we're going to help you out. And with that, I'm able to pay for my way to go back. And then whatever I get as donations goes straight to the people, to the men and to the families. And that's really helpful because I'm blessed enough to be able to cover those costs on my own. But everybody has to eat somehow. So I would just do your research and find Facebook, look on Facebook. And also, of course, I'll send you some links. Like I said, I did before, I think we can include that in the video or in the description so that people can go and check them out themselves and make sure like, okay, you have pictures of them in the snow, volunteers handing out jackets. It doesn't get more real than that.
Yeah. Did you pick up any Urdu just talking to these people?
No.
Or?
I did not pick up any Urdu. Yeah. Mostly, everybody understands some Arabic. Assalamu alaikum, wa alaikum assalam. And so this is the greeting that we all use for each other. Yeah. And then I use that because they understand. That's something that everybody gets. Right. These kind of things. Yeah. But I definitely have to learn more before I go back. It is time for me.
It shouldn't be high on the priority list. It's just a good to have, I'm sure.
It is good to have. You're right.
Yeah. What you're doing already is way above what most of us can do. To be honest, I really wish I could get out of my 9-to-5 bubble, which I'm trapped in. I got to pay the bills. Most of us are stuck in this situation where, okay, even when we're living in the first world, we have these really desirable lifestyles. But honestly, the system just traps us in this process that we had just enough to pay our bills. And that's why I just keep going. I can't just run away to Bosnia and start helping people, unfortunately. So I'm so glad that people like you are at least stepping out of your comfort zones and doing this. It takes a lot to do it, to be honest.
Thank you. Yeah. And something that I really love, it's not completely selfless, really. Almost be careful if you do go do something like this, hubby, because it is addicting. It is very addicting. Just giving and contributing in this way, it feels so good, and you just can't think of doing anything else because you can't think of anything else more worthwhile in a way. Yeah, right. So it's like, why would I do anything else? If I could save someone's life, or if I can make somebody's life better, why would I do? But I get it. Not everyone wants to go sleep on the floor of a hostel and do this life. Not everybody wants to do that. So we need people like you who care enough to be interested and to talk about it and to do some things like your podcast and use your platform for good. So that people like me can go back and hand jackets out of a truck. And that is it. That's the circle.
Yeah. And the people, of course, like me, and a lot of the listeners who are doing their 9-to-5s, at the very least, what we can do is just pitch in a little bit and help out. If you can.
And do what we can, really.
Yeah, whatever we can. Yeah.
I also think that it's such a great opportunity for us to kind of remake a system that was deeply flawed. Mm-hmm. And I think that one of the major problems that I saw, especially was like the way people were working and, like you said, getting this 9-to-5 and graduating and doing the right way and doing the traditional route. And I just got out of college and I was just writing my job applications and never getting a call back. And people can probably relate to that. And then I just thought, no, I'm not going to do it this way because that may work, but it doesn't work for me. And I'm going to go and try something out new that I'm interested in. And I fell in love. with this. So I guess what I can say is take this like time of uncertainty when you don't really know what to do and the world is falling apart around you and the smartest people in the world also have no answers, and run with it and do something, right? There's a gap here. And if you can make an opportunity out of that gap, go for it, because you may never get this again. Because now people are like, oh, he didn't get a job and he ran off to do Peace Corps work in Sierra Leone. Yeah. Cool. Because it was a crazy year and who knows what was going to happen. Right. So you have your chance, right? You have your excuse to go. So just go.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, just do it. Yeah, sometimes you just have to close your eyes and trust the fall.
Completely. Yeah, trust the fall. I really like that. Yeah. That's it.
What do your parents and your family think about this expedition of yours?
My parents are very supportive of me.
Okay.
Like I said, I was traveling into Africa a lot. I've been to Africa 3 times, and mostly the southern countries. And the first time I went, they were like, oh my God, why would you want to do this? And please don't do this. And then by the second or third time, they're like, okay, just call me every 3 days. My mom and I actually have a deal where if she doesn't hear from me in 3 days, then she gets worried and starts to contact the embassy. What we don't talk about is I could have already been dead 3 days ago. Yeah, but I'm so blessed to have supportive parents. And it's really funny because I just got this master's degree, which was awesome. And my parents helped me a lot through that. And then I come out and said, I think I want to go into humanitarian aid. And they're like, oh no, can you just get a job?
I mean, it's perfect. It seems like you love traveling. You seem very enthusiastic about just traveling in general. And now applying that with helping people out, it's like the perfect combo. Doing that for a living, right? Yeah. It's
perfect. And you also get to travel through people, right? I would never have met anyone from Pakistan or Algeria or Morocco or Syria, because these are places that I had no real inclination, or that just wasn't on my journey to go. But now I get to see their countries, and I can't tell you how many times people have grabbed my phone and Googled, because they didn't have cell phone or data, right? So they Googled, this is my village, and look, here's the map, and this is my prime minister, and this is me, and this is my school, look on Google Maps. And I would have never seen that.
Yeah.
And they tell me things about what they did and their lives and their families, and I get to just sit and live through people, and that is the best part of it all, really. That you don't have to go far. You just have to know interesting people. And now I've met you. And now we would never have met if I had not done this. And so it's such a funny way that the world works. It works funny, but perfect, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I think soon enough you can write a book or start a vlog or something. I'm sure a lot of people would want to follow you.
A blog would be nice.
Yeah.
But then I have to sit down for a long period of time. That's the thing. I mean, I hesitate to talk too much about myself, but better if I can be a conduit for a bigger issue. Yeah. And I'm telling you, this is a big issue. This is something that keeps people awake at night. So I'm just so thankful for your interest and your enthusiasm and your willingness to share your time and to get this out there, because it is something that really needs some attention, and it's just not getting it. Like we said, it's just not fair. It's a huge injustice, really.